A building engineer in an upscale tower witnesses a security supervisor publicly humiliate a courier on Christmas Eve, even snapping a child's violin by kicking a box. He breaks policy to run the freight elevator after hours to help her finish deliveries, getting suspended and risking his relationship with his daughter in the process. Quiet care and small changes ripple out afterward, shifting how the building treats couriers and restoring some dignity without fanfare. Just a quick note before we begin. Hit like, share this with a friend, and subscribe for more. Also, let me know in the comments which country you're watching from. It always amazes me how far these stories travel. The security supervisor flicked the orange freight closed sign with a knuckle, then grabbed the courier's canvas tote and tipped it onto the marble. Boxes slid out and skittered under the big Christmas tree, ribbon whispering on stone. He nudged one box with his shoe harder than he needed to. The corner split. A tiny violin rolled halfway out, and the neck made a dry, hollow crack. People in coats froze, bags in hand, faces lit by the tree and their phones. The woman in the neon vest scrambled on her knees, palms red, trying to gather labels and tape. "Please," she said, "they're timed deliveries." The supervisor peeled a shipping sticker off a box and pressed it onto her jacket like it was a name tag. "Freight closes at 5. Reading is free," he said. Marco came around the corner with a roll of duct tape and a paper cup of coffee. He worked the building. Navy coveralls, salt on boots, radio on his chest. He saw the violin, the neck bent in 2 places, strings sagging like loose wire. His coffee tilted. He set it down on the edge of the security desk before it spilled. He knew the supervisor, Gary. Not a bad guy, just tight on rules. Marco also knew his own situation. Final warning on his file, 1 more out of procedure, and HR would make good on the talk. He had a 7 p.m. pickup to get his daughter from the rink. He had a text from Elaine, the property manager, sent an hour ago. "No one uses freight after 5. No exceptions tonight. Please make sure staff knows." Marco's hand hovered over the broken violin. The grain felt rough where the neck had snapped. Someone had drawn middle stars on the case in Sharpie. He could see the calculated costs stacking up. Right up, maybe badge disabled. Missing the pickup and hearing about it later from his ex, who hated this building and the way it owned his time. He looked at the woman, middle-aged, hair tucked under a beanie, curls escaping, plastic bags inside her shoes to keep out the slush. Her cart was beat up and had a bungee cord holding it closed. She wasn't crying. She had that fixed face people make when they are swallowing it. Gary was already calling it in, voice flat into his radio. "We've got a courier here past hours. Refused instructions." He didn't look cruel. He looked tired and cold, a red scratch on his cheek, like he'd nicked himself shaving. Marco slid his roll of tape onto the desk and said, "I'll sign her to me. She's my vendor." He kept his voice even. "I'll run the freight." Gary shook his head. "You can't. We shut it down. I'll get chewed if I let you." He glanced at the camo dome in the ceiling. "You know the policy." "I know where the key is," Marco said. He lifted the flap on the desk and stepped into the white square taped on the floor. He picked the violin up with 2 hands like it was awake. "We'll be 13 minutes. "Marco," Gary said, softer now. "Don't. Elaine's already edgy. The new owner's coming for the walkthrough tomorrow. I don't need this." Marco reached across the desk and pulled the visitor tablet toward him. "What's your name?" he said to the woman. She cleared her throat. "Lena, ID?" he asked. She slid him a card and he scanned it, then printed a visitor tag and stuck it on her vest. He wrote, "Vendor," accompanied with a Sharpie. He turned the tablet around and had her sign. Gary's jaw worked. He lowered his voice. "They'll make me write you up. Write me up," Marco said. He went behind the desk to the wall panel by the elevator corridor, flipped the little metal door, and turned the brass key to service. The green light at the end of the hall flicked on. Freight hummed awake. 2 people near the tree took a step like they wanted a better look, then decided to look at the ornaments instead. Instrumental carols rolled out of hidden speakers, something slow and clean. Marco and Lena stacked boxes back on the cart. He took the ripped one with the violin and cradled it against his hip. "You good to push?" he said. "I'm good," she said. Voice steady. Gary came around the desk. "You're making me call her." "Call her," Marco said. He nodded toward the corridor. "Let's move." They walked fast down the service hall. It was colder back there, concrete and metal and the damp breath of the building running. Marco swiped his badge. The freight door slid open, big as a small garage. Inside, they stacked the cart and the boxes, bracing them with his tape. He pressed 7, then 14, then 19 on the panel. Tenants with late lights. His phone buzzed. Elaine, do not run freight. Response required. He swiped it away. The elevator lifted, thick cables singing behind the wall. Thank you, Lena said. Not gushy, like a fact. She pulled her beanie down tighter. I can pay the fee, if there's a fee. There's always a fee, he said. Don't worry about it. He pointed to the violin box. I'll deal with that one. The doors opened on 7. He stepped out first, scanned the hall, then led her down to a glass door with a wreath taped crookedly to it. He knocked, handed over 2 small parcels to a man with tired eyes and a sweater with tiny snowflakes. Back in the car, up again. His phone kept buzzing. A call this time. He didn't pick up. He imagined Elaine in her blazer, hair perfect, using his full name even in texts. He wasn't mad at her. He could hear the new owner's voice in his head too, the way they talked about brand touchpoints. On 14, a woman in a blazer with a red scarf opened the door, and the smell of cinnamon and printer toner puffed out. We thought you forgot us, she said, and smiled at Lena like she wasn't late at all. Little things. Marco felt something unclench. Back in the car, Lena looked at the violin case. That's going to need a repair, she said. Not a complaint. Just true. Leave it with me, Marco said. I'll put a note on it and pay to fix it. He wasn't sure how yet. He could move some things around. Skip the takeout he'd promised his kid. He would figure it out. The elevator jolted. The panel blinked and went dark. The car stopped between floors. Lena's eyes went to the ceiling, then to him. She didn't say anything. Of course, he thought. He pressed the radio on his chest. Freight stalled between 14 and 15. It's me. Gary's voice came back, tight. They killed your badge. She told me to stop the car. Marco placed his palm on the panel like that would help. I'm opening the run box. He popped a small metal panel by the door and turned the red handle. Old school. He held it in. The car hummed and started moving again, slow. Whoever designed this place had left a manual way out. Thank God, Marco, Gary said. They're going to flip. Noted, he said. He kept the handle down until the car lined up with 15 lights blinking back on. The doors opened a sliver. He pried them wider with his shoulder. His shirt felt damp. He tasted that metal taste you get when adrenaline hits. On 19, last stop, a small law office with a paper menorah taped to the window. The young assistant opened the door. His kid sat on a couch with earbuds in, bobbing her head. The assistant's eyes widened at the sight of the freight car coming after 5. Wow, she said. You're a lifesaver. She glanced at the case with the stars. Is that the violin? Deliveries, Lena said, and handed over the box. The assistant signed without reading, hands shaking a little from cold. Thanks, she said again. The door clicked shut, and Marco listened for the lock sliding into place. They rode down in silence. At the bottom, the freight doors opened to the service hall smell again. His phone buzzed. He looked. A text from Elaine. You're suspended. Turn in your badge and keys after shift. HR will reach out. He put the phone back in his pocket. His stomach flipped like he was standing up too fast. He took a breath and stepped out of the car. Gary waited by the door. He didn't look triumphant. He looked like a guy who didn't sleep enough. She's really mad, he said. You should go home. I've got one more thing, Marco said. He nodded toward the ripped box. I've got to own that. Gary looked at the torn cardboard like it had bitten him. I kicked it, he said. It came out so quiet Marco almost didn't hear. Marco nodded once. Then we'll own it. He set the box on a rolling stool and cut it open fully. He lifted the tiny violin. The break was clean on the neck, but it had stressed the body too. He knew a guy in his building who repaired guitars on weekends in his kitchen. That might work, but not tonight. He pulled a pad from his pocket, wrote down his name and number, wrote for the recipient of the violin. This was damaged in our lobby tonight. I will make it right after Christmas. Please call me. He slid the note into the case and taped it shut with careful strips so the tape wouldn't tug at the finish. He reached for his wallet, counted bills, and tucked 2 20s under the note. Not enough, but something. Lena watched, jaw set, eyes rimmed pink from the cold. You don't have to, she said. I do, he said. He knew what the union would say. He knew what HR would say. He also knew what he had just seen in the lobby. He taped the box closed and wrote fragile in block letters. They pushed the cart back to the main hall. The tree lights had shifted to blue, like a slow wave, the little LEDs chasing each other up and down. The people from before were gone. A janitor was mopping near the turnstiles, earbuds in, moving in time to a beat only he could hear. At the desk, Marco rang the small bell. The sound was thin against the marble. He filled out an incident form by hand. Item damaged at lobby. Sender to be notified. Building to cover cost, he wrote. He signed his name, even though he'd just gotten told his name didn't count here anymore. He turned to Lena. "Where are you headed next?" he said. "2 more buildings," she said. "Then back to the depot. They dock you if you miss any. It's like $4 per. Plus you get a flag and some lecture." She said it without heat. He looked at her hands. Her knuckles were raw. There was clear tape stuck to one glove like a second skin. "Have you eaten?" he asked. She shook her head and smiled. "I don't eat on runs," she said. "It slows you down." He stepped behind the desk, took his coffee, and set it in front of her. "It's not much," he said. She wrapped both hands around the cup and took a small sip. Steam fogged her glasses. She closed her eyes for 1 second. He grabbed 2 packets of crackers from the security drawer and slid them to her. Gary pretended not to see. They wheeled the car to the doors. Outside, snow blew like sifted flour under the streetlights. Delivery vans double-parked, hazards blinking like a line of red eyes. Marco held the door for her. As she pushed the cart over the threshold, a folder on top slid. Papers spilled onto the mat. He bent to help and saw what they were. A printed sheet, late delivery penalties. The numbers were ugly. Another paper, notice of eviction hearing with a date and a courtroom number. A corner of a photo peeked from a plastic sleeve. A boy in a school band shirt, holding a trumpet, grinning through a crooked tooth. He didn't comment. He stacked the papers and slid them back into the folder like they were hot and needed careful hands. "Thank you," Lena said again, simple. She tightened the bungee cord over the cart. "I'll be okay," she added, and it sounded like a thing she'd said a lot. He nodded. "Text me when you're done," he said, and wrote his number on the back of a shipping tag with a Sharpie, "just so I know you got home." She tucked the tag into her vest. "You're going to get in trouble," she said. "I'm already in trouble," he said. "Might as well make it worth it." He smiled, and for a second she did too. She pushed the cart into the snow, wheels squeaking. The wind took her breath and her hat puffed sideways. She leaned into it and moved down the sidewalk, small and bright against the grey. Marco watched until she turned the corner. He felt the shape of his keys in his pocket, too light now that the suspension note sat on his phone. He turned back into the lobby and handed the freight key to Gary. "You could file a grievance," Gary said, eyes on the desk. "Union might get you back in a week." "I'll talk to them," Marco said. He sent a quick text to his ex. "Running late. Can you wait by the rink 10 more? He watched the 3 dots pop up and disappear. Then, "Fine, 10. Don't push it." He jogged to the garage and warmed up his little car, windshield frosting, and then clearing in a rough oval. He drove to the rink and found his daughter sitting on the curb, ponytail wet, feet in sneakers, skates hanging from laces over her shoulder. She got in and watched him with that wide-eyed way kids do when they're deciding if you're the good guy or the bad guy today. "Sorry," he said. "Work thing." She nodded and looked out the window at the lit-up trees. "Everyone's got a work thing," she said, parroting something she'd heard from her mom. He didn't argue. They drove in quiet. He bought her fries at the drive-thru when she raised her eyebrows, and she made a little tent with the bag to keep the heat in. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept seeing the sticker on Lena's coat, the way it left a square of glue. He laid his badge on the kitchen counter and flipped it over and over, watching the light catch the crack in the plastic where it had been clipped and unclipped too many times. Morning came pale. He went back to the building to turn in keys. In the lobby, a folding table sat by the tree. Someone had put a handwritten sign on it, "Courier pickup after hours hold." There was a plastic bin on it and a stack of disposable hand warmers, a thermos labeled hot water with a ring of paper cups. A simple thing. Gary stood behind the desk, a strip of red tape on his uniform where a candy cane pin might go if he wore one. Gary looked up and gave him a small nod. No speeches. He slid a bowl forward. There were clementines in it. "Take one," he said. "They sent a memo this morning. Holiday exception." He didn't smile, but his eyes weren't hard. A woman from one of the law offices walked through with a roll of wrapping paper and set it against the bin. "We're going to do better," she said to no one specific, like a note into the air. On the freight door, a paper star had been taped up where only staff would see. On it, in thick marker, someone had drawn a violin and 4 wavy lines like sound. No words. Elaine met him by the elevators with a folder. She didn't make him sit. She handed him a yellow copy of his suspension and said, "It's not a termination. See the union." Then, softer. "That could have gone ugly. I'm not blind. I'll see what I can do." She looked tired. There were salt lines on her boots. 3 days later, a note came to his mailbox. Thin envelope, no return address. Inside was a Polaroid of a kid holding up the tiny violin, a piece of clear tape wrapped neat around the neck as a temporary brace. The kid grinned, like the thing worked anyway. On the back, in pencil, he says it still sings. "Thank you. Alfie." In the weeks after, little things shifted. Tenants stopped leaving their returns to block the doorway. Someone put a cheap bench by the service hall so couriers could tie their shoes. Gary started keeping a cart at the ready, wheels oiled, bungee cords untangled. When the weather went awful, Marco noticed from the sidewalk that the doors stayed open a little longer, the heater blasting down so the wind didn't knife people as they came in with arms full. The building sent around a new policy sheet about holidays. The language was dry, like always, but there was a line that said, "On Christmas week, freight will remain available until 8 p.m. for deliveries at staff discretion." That last part made Marco laugh. Staff discretion. He had given that phrase teeth. He got his badge back after the grievance. It looked the same, but the plastic didn't feel as slippery in his hand. His daughter made him a keychain out of red yarn and a metal washer and said, "Don't lose it again." And he promised he wouldn't. On a grey afternoon, he took his break in the lobby. He leaned against the cold marble and watched people come and go, boots squeaking on the mats. Snow dusted in when the doors swung. The tree glowed like it was breathing. He ran his thumb over a chipped tuning peg he'd found in the bottom of the ripped box and kept. It sat warm in his pocket now. A small half-moon of wood. He thought about doors. How some are heavy, and you need more than one person to push them open. How sometimes all it takes is one person acting like they belong in the space anyway, and suddenly they do. He looked at the freight call button. Its little green ring was lit. Outside, the snow fell steady and fine. In the glass, you could see the shape of the star taped to the freight door, white against grey. For a long minute, it didn't move at all. Then the heating vent kicked on, and the star trembled just a little in the warm air and stayed.